Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Senators, in which the Senators won 6-2. This puts the Sharks on their current road trip 0-3-1. They've only earned one of a possible 8 points as they move on tomorrow against the Montreal Canadiens, trying to get what would be their first win at the final game of their 5-game road trip. And the Sharks, right before this road trip, had a 6-game homestand, and that I said was a pivotal part of the season. And the Sharks actually performed quite well. They went 4-1-1. There were a few cracks in the Sharks' armor that you could maybe see during that homestand, games against like the Predators, even though they won, games against the Leafs, but it still looked solid. The Sharks still had a very good record on the homestand, and then they moved on to an equally as important road trip here, and now it looks like they've returned not even to what the Sharks were at previously, but even lower to what the Sharks were at before that homestand that they went 4-1-1, as they just look lost. They're getting outscored heavily at even strength. They're giving up many opportunities. It's just not looking good for the San Jose Sharks. Scoring for the Senators this game was Dzingel. Then, as usual for the Sharks, they give up the first NHL goal to Ben Harpur. Of course, after that was former San Jose Sharks Bodker, who had a 4-point game tonight, ironically enough. Mark Stone, as well as Pajärvi, which was an empty net, and then Bobby Ryan, which was not an empty net. For the Sharks, Joe Thornton scored on a power play, as well as Barclay Goodrow added one, sort of like the Melker Karlsson one against the Leafs the other day. It was a late one that really didn't do much in this game. But the main topic to talk about in this game is the defensive lapses that the Sharks continue to have. Just evaluating every single goal, it was a systematic failure all around. Looking at the Dzingel goal, yeah, it was a bit of bad luck that it deflects off of Pavelski's stick and still goes right to the net, but Brent Burns just standing around decides, oh well, I don't need to cover the most dangerous guy on the ice, Ryan Dzingel, who's standing right next to the net. Martin Jones ends up having no chance on this opportunity because Brent Burns is trying to, as usual, play more of an aggressive style, wanting to get this puck and transition it right away, but there's no reason to take that big of a risk. Next, you look at the Harper goal. Justin Braun caught a bit flat-footed at the blue line, but the fault really for this goal lies with Martin Jones. Yeah, it was a nice play shot by Ben Harpur, but still you really hope that Martin Jones can make that save, especially right before he makes a fantastic stick save onto Ryan Dzingel. It was looking like maybe this was going to shape up to be a very good game for Martin Jones. Didn't end up happening. Gives up this pretty bad one to Harper. Next, Bodker's goal on a breakaway. The fault here lies with Joachim Ryan. You know, they win the faceoff. Brent Burns goes down the wall for a shot. Evander Kane covers him. It's looking like a solid defensive play, but this puck rims around and Joachim Ryan makes such a terrible call to try and pinch here. This is not even a 50-50. This is like a 10-90 type of call, and even if he manages to keep this in, it wouldn't even result in some sort of great chance for the San Jose Sharks. This was an extremely high-risk, low-reward kind of play, and yeah, Joachim Ryan is a younger guy, you know, more of a rookie type of guy, but still you hope he can make the better decision. Ends up being a very long 2-on-1 breakaway for Bodker. Easy goal onto Martin Jones as he makes a nice move. You take a look at the Mark Stone one. This was at the start of the third period. The Sharks come in 3-on-1 shorthanded. Well, not 3-on-1, but 3 guys up in the play shorthanded. And if you're coming 3 guys up in the play shorthanded, you only have 1 guy back defensively. You have to get the puck onto net, or you have to get the puck behind the goal line. You cannot take shots that go wide, because every single time they're going to rim back around and come a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1 in this case for the other team, at which point it becomes a relatively easy goal to score, and the Senators were all of a sudden up 4-1. You look at the 5th goal by Pajärvi, empty net. Puck comes up to Erik Karlsson while the Sharks have 6 guys on the ice, and he just makes a pass to Pajärvi right into the middle of the ice. It even looked like as if, like, it wouldn't have surprised me if Pajärvi was a Sharks player with how easy that pass was to intercept, basically. Pajärvi ends up just taking the shot, hits the empty net. And so I don't even care about the Bobby Ryan goal at this point. The game was definitely over. Just managed to score. I don't even blame Justin Braun, who was probably the guy to cover Bobby Ryan at that point. It's 5-2 with, I don't know, it was like, what, 30-ish seconds left in the game. But just at every moment, the Sharks made a horrible defensive mistake, or I guess a goaltending mistake, that led to the Senators each and every goal. And you look at the amount of odd man rushes they got, the Bodker breakaway, the Mark Stone 3-on-1. Let's take a look at how many odd man rushes the San Jose Sharks had. I mean, besides a couple of maybe 3-on-2s, which I barely count unless they're clear-cut 3-on-2s, the Sharks had a total of 0. No 2-on-1s, no breakaways, nothing going on for the San Jose Sharks. And the Ottawa Senators are the worst, not even one of the worst, the worst defensive team in the NHL. They give up a ton of goals, over 4 per game, at least coming into tonight, if I'm not mistaken. They give up the most shots, which is close to 40. They have the worst penalty kill in the league. The Senators are not a defensive stalwart kind of team, and yet the Sharks couldn't really get much of anything generated, even though they still ended up putting up 38 shots onto Craig Anderson. Anderson was good, but he didn't even have to be that great. The Sharks, just a total meltdown, and you can try and blame, people are blaming the coach, you can try and blame the defense, the goaltending, the offense. At some point in the season, every single facet of the Sharks game has had blame put onto them, and the reason for that is because every facet of the Sharks game deserves some blame. DeBoer cannot escape blame in this situation. Jones and Dell cannot escape blame. The defense can't. The forwards can't. Right now, it's just an all-around systemic failure for the San Jose Sharks. This road trip now, before you could still give oh, but don't worry, the Sharks are first place or second place in the Pacific Division with this loss. Because now that they have equal games played, I believe, against the Vegas Golden Knights, the Sharks find themselves for the first time in a long time on the outside looking in, and it's something that definitely could change quickly. A win against the Montreal Canadiens could, in theory, put them back into, let's say, third or second place in the Pacific Division, depending on what happens in the games tonight. But still, at this point now, the Sharks are on the outside looking in, and this is definitely a bit of a red flag here for the San Jose Sharks, that something does need to change. Whether that does come with the coach, obviously the easiest thing to change, or whether something systemically changes, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But if the Sharks lose this game against the Canadiens tomorrow and they head back to San Jose after a 0-4-1 road trip, there has to be something major that goes down. Next is the line combos. A bit of a different thing. Obviously, Timo Meier was injured once again here tonight, and it does sort of, or I guess this afternoon, it does give me doubt that he'll actually end up playing tomorrow against the Canadiens as well. And the big issue that occurred here in this game against for the Sharks is that DeBoer ends up moving LeBanc off the first line rather quickly, and so we have Hertl and Couture. The Sharks two of their best, maybe even just their best forwards playing in this game. They're playing with Barclay Goodrow for the majority of it, as well as Melker Karlsson right after. And it was just a few days ago I was calling Goodrow and Melker Karlsson, who yes do have 2 goals between them in the past 2 games, but I've called those 2 players offensive black holes basically. And you're putting Hertl and Couture, 2 of the Sharks' best players, as I said, you're putting them with Karlsson and Goodrow, and it's basically weighing them down completely to where the first line has been mostly ineffective in this game basically. And so I don't know what the Sharks can do when it comes to this offensive depth. Most teams will deal with a rather significant injury at multiple times this season. I mean, the Sharks just played against a team, against the Leafs, who have no William Nylander still, had no Austin Matthews for a good chunk of the season, and yet they still found ways to win. The Sharks are down 1 of their best players, yes, in Timo Meier, but you can't be running with lines Hertl, Couture, and Melker Karlsson, or Hertl, Couture, and Barclay Goodrow. You need to at least keep LeBanc up there. I don't care if you want to punish him or anything like that. There's a reason why most coaches don't punish veteran players when they make mistakes, like punish a Brent Burns when he makes a mistake, is because you can't afford to do that, because you're going to lose so much value from having Brent Burns on the ice. And so you might want to punish Kevin LeBanc, but you cannot afford to run with Barclay Goodrow or Melker Karlsson on that first line for an extended period of time. And that's exactly what happened in this game, and we saw the result, as Hertl, Couture, and whoever was there really didn't get much generated at all in this game. So I don't know if LeBanc's the first line answer, but someone that isn't, Radil or Goodrow or Karlsson needs to find a spot on the first line if Timo Meier is injured for an extended period of time, because right now it's not going to work offensively with a 4th line player playing on the first line. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action, as I've said a couple of times in this video. They'll be back in action against the Montreal Canadiens tomorrow, their final game of their road trip, looking to at least get a win on it. Going back to San Jose ended on maybe a good note, coming back and maybe get a bit of momentum switch going. But at the moment, the Sharks really aren't looking that great on the road trip, and I'm not sure how much faith I have for them to look good in a second game of a back-to-back against the Canadiens. Class dismissed.